Hey there. So I decided to kind of impromptu turn on my camera and vlog me reading this particular book because it's been a while since I've been really excited about one particular book being released, and I won't keep you in suspense. It's Honey Girl by Morgan Rogers. There was a few things that just kind of stood out. First of all I really know about this book is that it's a romance. It's following a main character who has a PhD. She gets drunk married to this woman in Vegas and then basically escapes her life and goes to New York City to live with her new wife. Everything about that appeals to me. And another reason why I'm really excited about this book is that there are a few people that I follow on BookTube, Gabby from Gabby Reads and Noelle Gallagher, who have really said that this book is pretty good. And so it gets me like even more hyped. I'm really excited about this premise. So it's nearing the weekend. And I have kind of a lull in my reading schedule, so come along as I vlog my reaction to reading this book. I'm 3 chapters in and I thought we could have a little chat on my thoughts so far. Normally the romances I pick up have a pretty light tone. They're like contemporary romances, so they are pretty casual in the way that they address the reader. And this one, Honey Girl, is surprisingly solemn or wistful. Like the prologue immediately sets up this very kind of more serious tone to the writing and to the storytelling. And the more I get into it, the more I'm starting to realize that it's not quite all focused on the romance. Rather, we're gonna probably see Grace, our main character, grow and kind of like develop as a character. It's going to be really focused on her relationship with her father, because that in and of itself is also quite a interesting arc in the plot. So Grace is our main character. She recently just got her PhD in astronomy, which is a little bit contentious in that it's different from the path her father wanted her to go on. Her father is this very strict military man. He goes by Colonel, like not even his name, he goes by Colonel to everyone. Those two ideals that Grace is trying to live by, her own and her father's, kind of clash a lot. And this incident where she may or may not have gotten drunk married to this woman in Vegas really throws a wrench in Grace's like everyday activity. I think it's really starting to affect her views on her life. It's kind of exacerbating how lost and aimless she feels. On that topic, actually, we're getting mentions of how not diverse academia can be, especially in, I feel like, a subject as niche as astronomy is. For example, when Grace is applying for this job, she realizes that the panel interviewing her is basically all white. She, in her like groups of friends, in her workplaces, in her lab, I think she's really focused on trying to find those connections with people of color. And we get a pretty like straightforward take that academia is really not diverse, or at least not as diverse as it could be. And the same applies to a lot of executive boards at large companies. Kind of off topic here, we're gonna have a little 180. I think the growth of K-pop's influence in Western media has really kind of escaped me a little bit, just because I'm like surrounding myself with K-pop kind of news on a daily basis. But this book mentioned Monsta X like just casually in one of the chapters, and that I'm still not used to seeing K-pop so casually mentioned in any sort of non-Asian media or non-niche like communities, online communities. It makes me really happy, and I'm really surprised every time I find it. I'm really glad this genre and style of music is becoming more normalized in Western media. So yeah, that made me really happy. I keep getting really surprised by this book. This book is so emotional, and it's honestly a lot to read and kind of process. So Grace and her wife Yuki's relationship it's interesting. It's so romantic, like really romantic. Like modern day relationships have this element of like forced casualness. There is none of that pretense here. Their relationship starts off with a bang, so intense. Their conversations and their descriptions to each other are romantic in the way they describe and put to words their feelings for each other. It's kind of really early too. They just met, you know, in Vegas. They barely remember their night in Vegas, and now they're having these text conversations, and Yuki has a radio show that she does, and the way she kind of like professes her love, well, I don't even know if can you call it love at this point, her devotion to Grace, I don't even know how to call it, but just the intensity of the way she describes her emotions is, wow, another level. We're following a main character who on the outside is supposed to be really tough and kind of have her life completely in order. She has never stopped and paused. It's always one thing after another. In the chapter I just finished, you really see kind of her breakdown, how alone she feels, how burned out she is after 11 years of schooling. I can't even imagine being in school for that long. She's dealing with both the pressure of having to be the best and also feeling really alone because no one but herself knows the kind of stress and pressure she's under. Truly, like, even though she has such a strong support system, her friends are practically family, she still feels that kind of loneliness. There's a lot of discussions around mental illness, though it's not really straightforward. We see it come up with Agnes, one of Grace's friends, and it also appears with Grace's father. Yeah, I didn't expect I would need this many breaks in between reading this book. I've had to take a few breaks. Like, I take a break literally every chapter just because it's so intense. This book it's a very intense book. This is not a light read. I went into this with very, very wrong expectations. Hello, I was just editing earlier and my last clip was like super sad and depressing. I don't know why I looked so like no energy, but it's fine. We're fine. The book was fine. I finished Honey Girl and my thoughts are pretty conflicted. This book should not have been like so heavily marketed as a romance because the romance really just was not the center of this. This book was very much a story about a main character kind of losing her way and then rediscovering herself and then kind of like settling some of these issues that she's ignored in her life. That's the main conflict and kind of what drives the plot, not at all the romance. The romance was like a nice catalyst for a lot of the events actually that happened in the book, and I understand why it was there, but this really wasn't a romance. You won't get a lot of the kind of cute date moments, you don't get a lot of the romance development. They're basically in love from the start. I'm not really sure how to feel about the writing even after finishing the book, just because, so when I was reading it, it reminded me a lot of the way fanfiction authors write, where they're like really flowery and then the conversations the characters have don't make sense. They're like not realistic conversations that you have with regular people, but it's kind of like flowery but in a very contemporary setting. And what do you know, in the acknowledgements the author writes that she was very much like influenced by the like fanfiction community. That's not to say I didn't cry like a big baby at the end of the book. I definitely shed so many tears. Family drama really gets to me, especially when it's like between a parent and a child. Like when you try to resolve those issues, that kind of conflict always makes me cry every single time. This isn't my favorite romance of the year, just because it's not a romance. I appreciated what it was trying to do, and I think that each character is presented in their like kind of rawest form, like all the good and the bad, and so it's very an honest portrayal, I think, of a lot of, you know, like late 20s adults and kind of what they go through. I'm not sure that I really enjoyed the writing all the time. It was very kind of flowery and pretentious and sometimes not in the good way. The characters sometimes had these conversations that felt very forced and kind of pushed these like characteristics and these kind of like narratives that are very popular in the mainstream right now, but weren't really like commented upon later on. They were kind of just like supposed to be relatable zingers for the readers, I guess, to relate to, and they're relatable, but I'm not sure I enjoyed it as much. Okay, I've talked enough about this one book. I gave it 4 stars at the end. It was fine. a little bit of a letdown, honestly. I just placed too many expectations on it, but it was a good book. I'd recommend it if you want to read a book about kind of self-discovery, and also if you want to read a book with really beautiful like metaphors and theoretical conversations that you have with people that are also very flowery and metaphorical. That's it for this video. If you like what you saw, please click like, and if you want to see more, click subscribe, and I'll see you all next time.